we all bow down our heads?
Our God, thank you. Thank you for your love and your grace, and for the sacrifice, and for every small thing you did. You woke you up, each and every one of us, fit and healthy, and you chose us to be in your will. That's wonderful. You chose us. We didn't walk here by ourselves. There are many people who are struggling and striving and lost and dead, but you chose us to be here. Lord, thank you for making us worthy. And it's not me standing here. I'm not here to talk about psychology or perceptions or philosophy or feelings or emotions. Don't let me lead you or lead the church. You are the head of the church, God. Please come and take control. I'm dead. It's you. Thank you, Father. Please talk to each and every one of us, Lord. In the mighty name of Savior and Lord Jesus Christ, I pray. Amen. In the 1600s, there is the first missionary who went to Korea. His name was Robert Thomas. And he had a box of Bibles he was carrying to distribute. He was in his ship, and by the time he was reaching the shore, they shot him, and he was throwing all the Bibles onto the shore, and he was yelling, "Jesus, Jesus!" And that's how the first missionary traveled has been to Korea. And the second attempt took place in 1884. That's when officially the government of Korea, God gave the permission to Indians to spread Christ. And since then, few missionaries started going there. And in 1884 and in the starting of the 19th century, there are less than 1% of Christians in Korea. And in 1907 of January, there were 1,500 Christians gathered in January of 1907. It's called the Korean Pentecost because the 1,500 of them gathered together, and they started praying, confessing, weeping, crying. And one of the pastor who was there, he described the event the sound of many praying brought not confusion, but a vast harmony of sound and spirit, mingling together of souls moved by irresistible impulse of prayer. The prayer sounded as falling of many waters, an ocean of prayer beating against God's throne. Just as the day of Pentecost, spirit of heaviness and sorrow for sin came down upon the audience. The whole audience wept in agony of conviction. The meeting went until 2 a.m. in the morning, and it continued for 3 days. This happened in 1907. And later on, Korea was struggling with the Japanese invasion, and they were separated to South and North Korea. And that's when North Korea had the first 4-year college. The missionaries who traveled there established the first college in South Korea. The first one. It's called Union Christian College, and in 1900 there were less than 1% of Christians. And if we just move 1 century afterwards, there are over than 10 million Christians. 10 million Christians in South Korea. And the wonderful thing is, they are second to America, sending out the highest missionaries throughout the world. And we are a big country, we know that. But seeing the size, South Korea is the size of in population, it's the size of Florida and California together. But they're sending they're second in sending most number of missionaries. How could that be possible? How is it even possible? 1% to 10 million, 100 years? Like, didn't the word of God came to many other nations before them? Didn't it? It did. Since then, Korea was called as the Jerusalem of the East because Christ was born there for them. That's possible because we can go to John chapter 12, 24th verse, 24 to 26. Verily, verily, I say unto you, except a corn of wheat fall into the ground and die, it abideth alone. But if it die, it bringeth forth much fruit. Unless it grain, it says like, unless, except, or I'm seeing that there, except and unless are like exceptions. Exceptions. A corn of wheat fall into the ground and die. There should be death to be life. To have, to live, and to save lives, we should die. The person inside us should die. The I should die. In 1 Corinthians 11:1 we see Paul saying that, I lived as Christ and so he do follow me. How many of us can say that? He was so confident and he said that because he was dead. And we see the ministry of Paul. I don't think nobody was ever been persecuted as Paul. Not even now, I don't think people might say that, but no. He was being whipped. He was being shipwrecked, but he didn't give up. Because he knew that he was dead and Christ would never give up. He said that. And abideth alone. It's clear. Abideth alone. Abiding is obeying. Obeying. There is no compromise there. You have to obey him. When you abide, when you just have to obey him, then only it brings not just fruit, much fruit. Much. We see many nations who knew Christ later, and the number one fastest growing Christian nation is China. And it is, the research says that the next 10 years it will be the largest Christian populated nation in the world. And we see news that there have been churches burnt out, pastors being persecuted, being taken to jail, but the fact is they are being dead and China is seeing much fruit. If each and every one of us here are dead, how would it be? How much fruit can we produce? And shall we go to 1 Corinthians 15 chapter 1 to 4. Moreover, brethren, I declare to you the gospel which I preached to you, which also you received, and in which you stand, by which ye also are saved, if you hold fast that word which I preached to you, unless you believed in vain. For I delivered to you first of all that which I also received, that Christ died for our sins, according to the scriptures, and that he was buried, and that he rose again the third day, according to the scriptures. When everything was being done according to the scriptures, how much importance are we giving to the word of God? Are we abiding in it? Are we living it? It is mentioned according to the scripture so clearly. Paul, the greatest among the apostles, said that. According to the scriptures. Without that, there can be nothing be done. And Ephesians 1 verse 22, we see, and he put all things under his feet and gave him to be head over all things to the church. That was so intense, and appointed him as head over everything for the church. Who is the church here? We are the church. What is he telling? Who is the head of us? He is the head of us. Are we really making him the head of us? Or are we just thinking that we made him the head and doing whatever we wanted? If he is the head of us, would we be like this? Or would we live like Paul did, Peter did, John did? We would break jails like Paul did. We would not be burnt like, even through in the oil like John, we would not be even burnt. If he is the head, we would be like the Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. We would get into the fire and come out. If he is the head of us. Dear church, I know we are humans, but when we die, sure, there is a fruit. Love it, love to die. And once you're dead, each and every one of us will become a Paul. Every one of us, not just this nation, the whole world will change. The thing is, we have to die to the world. Thank you.
Okay, we're going to be in Galatians 3. So guys, this is, those of you who've been here know that we've been going through the book of Galatians, it's not easy. It's not easy to preach, it's not easy to understand because it goes against everything, doesn't it? So far, what we've learned, it's like completely contradictory to church and like the message, and it's like stop what you've been doing. And we learned last week it was a fascinating statement where it talked about in verse 18 of chapter 2, it says, if I rebuild what I destroyed, I prove that I am a sinner. And it was talking about the law. If I try to fix myself off of the law, if I think that my life has to be under the 10 Commandments or the 613 commandments, right? And if I have to obey this thing, then I'm actually a sinner by trying to do this. That's what Galatians chapter 2 said. That's why I'm saying it's like really contradictory to what we were taught. Because we're taught, hey, if this is what obedience looks like, and this was beautiful about what Rathan's preaching, because he's preaching the truth, we do have to obey, but we have to know what to obey. Right? And so if we try to obey the law, we're sinners. Because by doing that, we're telling God that the cross didn't do the job, which was to make us free from sin. So if I try to make myself free from sin, I'm sinning. Because I'm not in obedience to the cross and to what Jesus actually sacrificed. It's already crazy, right? Wow. It's like already, like, wait a second, Jeff, you're preaching something that, no, we read it, we've gone through it, that was chapter 2. Now we're into chapter 3, and so that was just the last, we went through the last, 4 or 5 verses of chapter 2 last week alone, and it took 45 minutes just to go through 5 or 6, whatever verses, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 5 verses. Took 45 minutes. And so this week my goal is to get through 5 or 6 verses, maybe 5 verses of chapter 3. But it should be a little bit quicker. It should be a little bit faster today because it rolls a little bit. It's not so much. Every statement in chapter 2, verses 17 through 21 was life-changing. It was spiritually transforming. It changed the way, it has to change the way you think. So I have to start with this. Look, we read the Word not to memorize it. We read the Word not to study it. We read the Word to become it. So when you read a verse from the Bible, you need to, like, I'm going to give you insight to my secret place for a second. Is that okay? Just this is what He has put me into this place. And said, look, you're a pastor, you have to lead. So if they don't know what you're doing, then they won't know what to do. Like, I'm teaching you so that you teach them. That's what I'm about to tell you. So, like, I don't know, let's go to Galatians 1 really quick. Let's look at Galatians 1:1. Paul, an apostle, not apostle of men, not sent by men or from men, but by Jesus. He's the one that made me an apostle. So then, understand that He's called you to the same thing. See, we struggle with the word apostle because we say there's only 12 apostles, there's only the 12, and we're less. But Jesus taught those guys and said, you make others equal to you. Raise them up. Right? That's what He said. He said, disciple them the way I discipled you. If I made you an apostle, you better make them an apostle. But what does man do? Man says, but you're an apostle, so I must not be. You were handpicked by Jesus, I wasn't, so I'm going to bow to you. I'm going to submit to you in whatever you say. And that right there is sin. Because you've made them Lord of your life, not Jesus. So that you need to understand the thought that those 12 guys were special and you aren't is a sin. It's a sin to think that way. The only thing is not a sin is for you to realize you're equal to everyone. Everyone. That's not a sin. To call yourself an apostle is the only act that's not a sin. If you say anything less than that, you are sinning. This is Galatians. So do we understand? Like, I'm telling you, this is contrary to what church, because church, what does church want to do? Church wants to make you an obedient servant to them. And how dare we do that? I can't do that with conscience. I know my Lord. I know Him. And that's a sin to do. I can't do it. My job is to raise you up to do my job. And I don't mean preach. I mean be the light. That's my job. This is not my job. I don't get paid to preach. That's not why I take the money. I don't do it for that. I do it because I'm to lead you into being the light out there. Your actions, not your words. It's not about what you say. It's about what you do. And what you do depends on who you are inside. You can't do it right unless your heart's right. And so in my secret place, when I read something like this, I'm immediately saying, I read it, Paul, an apostle, not from men or by man, but by Jesus Christ and God the Father who raised Him from the dead. Father, I thank you that you called me to be an apostle. And I don't even understand what that looks like, God, but I will pursue it with all that I have. Father, I don't know what an apostle is, but I'm going to do it. And whatever Paul is, I am, because you've called him into your image and you've called me into your image. Therefore, we are equals. And if we are co-equals with Christ, that means that I have to do what He did. And He called me a co-heir. You've called me a co-heir. That's in Colossians, Lord. But that's where I am. I'm a co-heir with Christ on the throne. Father, I thank you that that's where I am. Father, I will be an apostle and I will tell the world about you and I will give up my life unto death. I am not afraid of anything except to not fear you. That's the only thing I'm afraid of. I have to do what I've been created to do. Every breath I have is yours, Lord. That's the prayer that I have in my secret place. Every verse. Whatever I read, Father, I thank you that that's who I am. Help me to apply this to my life. I will not leave here until I have a revelation and an understanding of an intimate encounter about what you mean in this verse. And I may spend a month on one verse before I move on to verse 2. But that's where I'm at, okay? That's where He makes me go. So we get to chapter 3, verse 1. And my encouragement is always this. Whatever God brings on a Sunday morning, y'all know I don't write sermons. I don't have an outline. I don't have a goal. I don't know. He tells me what to say. Half the time I don't know what I'm saying. It's coming out of my mouth and I'm going, whoa, this is amazing. Jesus is God. There is no one but Him. Because half the stuff that comes out of my mouth, I'm learning for the first time. Like, I can't take credit for that. He's amazing. And so when we read this today, like, I want you to know that every time that a message is preached, I believe that it's the Lord saying, you need to do this. And so what I do is I go back and I read those 5 verses every day. Every day. Every day. Because I'm hearing it for the first time just like you are. So I'm encouraging you. Don't just take a Sunday morning sermon and go, oh, that was a really good sermon, and leave. Like, marinate in that thing. We've got it online. If you're internet savvy, whatever, like, go to YouTube. Type in UBC Kingsville. It's got the date on there. So last Sunday's been on there since Monday, probably, right? So you can watch it every day of the week. If you don't, we've got the DVDs in the back. They're in the back. If you don't want to do that, just take a DVD, put it in your computer, put it in your DVD player, watch it. But spend time in it. And I'm not trying to tell you about me. I don't care about me. I'm talking about that word was for me too. And you need to learn what I'm learning, right? Like, this is really good stuff. Does that make sense what I'm saying? Yeah. So my encouragement is that when we read this today, we go through it, but that it changes you, and then you keep staying in that place so that you stay changed. So he starts off with the phrase in verse 1, you foolish Galatians, which actually he says, oh, you foolish Galatians. Like, there's bereavement. As you may not know what bereavement means, it's like a passionate hurt. He's saying it with the intention of like a husband that just lost his wife. Bereaved. Oh, you foolish Galatians, whom I taught already. I've been in your church and I taught you the right way, and you've struggled because you're teaching the law again. So we get, oh, you foolish Galatians, who has bewitched you? Who has hypnotized you? Before your very eyes, Jesus was clearly portrayed as crucified. What he's saying there is, I taught you right, and I showed you that he was crucified. I was so clear in my demonstration of the gospel. I was so clear in my demonstration of the gospel that it was as clear as if he had been crucified right in front of you in this church. That's what he's saying here. I have the New Living Translation on my phone because I liked the way it said it, and it really helped me to understand some stuff. So I'll read that to you because we don't have it on the projector. But, oh, you foolish Galatians, who has cast an evil spell on you? For the meaning of Jesus Christ's death was made as clear to you as if you had seen a picture of his death on the cross. I would like to learn just one thing from you. Verse 2, guys. Verse 2. I only want to learn one thing from you. Did you receive the Spirit by the works of the law or by hearing with faith? Like, how did you receive the Spirit of God? See, some of you right now, and I don't mean to condemn, but some of you right now are like, I don't know if I received the Spirit of God. You're supposed to have. I'll be honest with you, you have. See, Romans says that when you were baptized, in Romans chapter 6, when you were buried with him, you were raised with Christ to walk in newness of life. It says when you were raised as a new creature, led full of the Spirit. That's chapter 6 of Romans. So when you came to faith, and you went under that water, whether it was under the sprinkle or under the tank, dumped in, that I don't care. But when you went under that water was put on top of you. When you went under it, you came up a new creature full of the Spirit. So he says here that my only question is, now how did you get filled with the Spirit? Was it because you obeyed the law? Was it because you followed the law? Was it because you did something else that made it seem right to a man? Or did you get filled with the Spirit because you have faith? See, the word there is faith, not belief. Remember the difference. There's a huge difference between belief and faith. Belief is knowing. You have evidence, so you believe. Seeing is believing. Faith is walking without sight. Faith is walking without evidence. It's being certain without evidence. That's faith. So literally, it goes faith, evidence, belief. When you have faith, God will give you the evidence so that you believe. And then when you believe, you confess with your mouth and you believe in your heart, then you're saved. Right? That's Romans 10. Romans 8 is where we talk about this new transformation. This is where we're at. The equivalent of where we're at in Galatians is going to be found at this point in Romans 8. Romans 8, by the way, is really good because it's more in depth. Obviously, Galatians 3, Romans 8. You know, it's more book to it, more information. So he says, let me ask you this one question. Did you receive the Holy Spirit by obeying the law of Moses? Did you get it through observing the law, by obeying the laws that Moses wrote on the tablet? Is that where you got the Spirit from? Now recognize the connotation there. You're not supposed to get it that way. He already taught that it's not that way. See, when he came in, he already explained this, right? He said, when I came into your church, this is not in Galatians, but this is what he says when he rewrites another letter. He says, when I came in, did I come with eloquent and persuasive speech? Or did I come with demonstrations of the power of the Spirit? So he didn't come talking. He didn't come quoting scripture. He didn't come doing speaking. And he came in and said, bring me your sick. Bring me your blind. Bring me your deaf. Bring any dead bodies in here. We'll raise them from the dead. That you know that Jesus is Lord. Amen. That's how he started every sermon. Paul came into the room with demonstrations of the Spirit. Proved his relevance. Proved his truth. And then he preached. It's the same thing Robbie did when he came here the first time. He came in and he said, there's a person in the back of the room. I don't know who you are, but I feel you're in the back right, and you've got 3 rods in your back. And those of you who were here, remember, Larry came up and got healed. And then after that, he was like, there's another woman that's near there as well, and both of your shoulders are really bad and you can't raise your arms. Would you come up? And that was his wife, Sabra. And Larry and Sabra both came up and they were both completely healed. Completely healed. Now they didn't receive their healing fully because within 6 months they were back to being crippled again. But they were healed in that moment. And that's another sermon. But it's amazing that what God does. Robbie came in and he did that and he was like, okay, y'all ready to listen? Yes. You know, for me, I didn't believe in all of this stuff that I'm preaching now. I was completely under the law. And then I got healed. And when I got healed, it was like, what else don't I know? So here we go. And I stood before you and said, and this is almost 4 years ago now, so most of y'all weren't here. But I stood before everybody and said, look at me, I'm straight, I'm not bent, I'm not crooked, and I'm completely pain-free for the first time in 15 years. Are y'all willing to go on a journey with me? Are you willing to find out what we don't know? And everybody was there. 72 people that Sunday. And they were like, amen, let's do it. We didn't know what it meant. Probably if we knew, we would have said no. The second thing he says, or did you believe by what you heard? Remember, faith comes by hearing. So did you believe by what you heard? So they amplified it by hearing with faith, because faith comes from hearing. And the New Living Translation, it says, of course not. You received the Spirit because you believed the message that you heard about Christ. That's how you received the Spirit. Verse 3. Are you so foolish? After beginning with the Spirit, are you now trying to attain your goal by human effort? Wow. Go back to the other translation. Don't go to that. Yeah. Are you so foolish? After beginning with the Spirit, are you now going to be made complete by the flesh? Like, no, that's not how it works. See, you can't make yourself holy no matter how hard you try. obedient by trying to obey. Obeying the law is a sin if Jesus has moved you to another level. It's hard to understand. I know it. I know what I just said. I heard it myself. It's not easy to grasp. But to obey the law and to make that your life is a sin. Your life is a sacrifice of Jesus. Every breath you have is to imitate him. Every breath you have is to be his ambassador, as though he was making his intentions and his, what's the word? His cries, I can't think of the right word. It's 2 Corinthians 5:21. You're an ambassador of Christ, as though he was making his cries through you. So that's who you are. You're to live that out. The hope of glory is Christ in you. That's the hope of glory. What's the hope of glory? That's heaven. All of heaven is hoping that you will allow Jesus to live in your life and not try to do it some other way. Look, last week I actually got yelled at by somebody in our church. Beautiful. Beautiful. I got yelled at after we finished the church decorations, taking them down. I got yelled at. It was like, everything you preached was right except for one thing. You have to teach the law, because if you don't teach the law, people will continue to sin. I am not your teacher. I'm not your teacher. You want to know what sin is? Read it yourself. Get a relationship with Jesus. But don't you dare just think that the law in Leviticus or in Exodus or wherever you want to look, Deuteronomy, it's all in there. But that's not all that's sin. Jesus is very clear. If you read the Old Testament, you'll think that just committing adultery is sin. Jesus is very clear. Looking at a woman with that in your heart is sin. Getting angry at somebody is murder, right? So you got to read the whole thing in order to know what sin is. And this is really fascinating when Galatians comes out and Paul says, look, I didn't teach you to obey the law. What did he say in chapter 2? He said, I had to personally, in front of everyone, reprimand Peter because he was obeying the law. He was preaching grace, but he was obeying the law. I had to tell him, you're a hypocrite. That's chapter 2. I don't want that. I don't want to be reprimanded by heaven. I don't want to be told, hey, why are you teaching the law? No. We teach the word in its fullness. I'm not going to settle for 20%. I don't care what you've been taught. I know what I was taught. Man, every day of my life, didn't matter where I was, law was everything. Because it's what we were all taught. But that's not what this says. Are you so foolish? You were filled with the Spirit, you began in the Spirit, and now you're trying to walk in the flesh? You're trying to conquer your flesh with your flesh? Is that how it works? You can't conquer your flesh with your flesh. You can't beat your body into submission. You live by the Spirit and you won't gratify the flesh. By the way, this flesh right here, this is sarke. Sarke, that word flesh is sarke. Sarke is the opposite of the Spirit. It's actually the opposition. The flesh is controlled by the devil. The Spirit is God. The flesh is the devil. That's actually, in Greek, the way that works. So it's that you can't get there by conquering your flesh. Your sinful man died, like Rathan said. Your sinful man died. So then walk into newness. Your mind, you have to set it on new things, on higher things, on things above, on heavenly things. You have to set your heart there first, and then your mind can get there. But I don't allow myself to settle for anything less. And how crazy is it that the law is less? It's crazy because I wasn't taught that. Not a single pastor in my entire life ever taught me that. Every pastor was, and I'm not trying to make anybody feel bad. I hope you understand that. I just want to bring truth into the room. And I got to go through some stuff too, because like my brain's sitting there, honestly, right now my brain's going, wait, Jeff. But I recognize that it's my brain and not my heart. And I read that and I know what that just said. That verse 3, you can't get there that way. I'm going to read verse 3 from this translation real quick. How foolish can you be? After starting your new lives in the Spirit, why are you now trying to become perfect by your own human effort? Like, it's not going to happen. It can't happen that way. See, that's what I'm trying to tell you. See, I realized something one day. I realized, despite what I look like, that I'm perfect. I realized that despite my actions, I'm perfect. I realized that despite my past, I'm perfect. And I don't have to cut anything else off. I just have to walk in His declaration. He calls me perfect. I realized that one day. And because of that, I haven't had a day since almost 4 years, 3 years and 8 months. I haven't had a day where I was condemned for anything that I did. And I have never condemned anybody for what they did. Because I realized they're perfect too. You're perfect. Because the cross made you perfect. It made you whole. And whole means filled. It means, like Dan Muller says it, he says, it's a city with no empty houses. It's a house with no empty rooms. You're completely whole. Then why do you keep trying to fill your life up with things that you think matter? You're already filled. You're already made perfect. That's who you are. See, I realized that about 3.5 years ago. And I went, whoa, how do I grasp that though? It's a process. I'm hunting that thing down. Because I know that Jeff's not perfect. By the way, I'm Jeff, for anybody who doesn't know. Jeff's not perfect. Jeff's got a lot of flaws. But I am perfect. Because the perfect one lives in me. And if He lives there, do you understand that where God is, everything has to be perfect. So if this is His temple, if you are His house, then there's no flaws in you. It's just having that revelation, having that understanding changes who you are. It's not about anything else, is it? If He's already living in me, then I don't have to make myself better. My house has already been cleaned. I don't have to tidy up my life before I can ask Him in. He's already there. Guess what? When He came in, He tidied up for me. See, that's what I realized. Like, I'm that perfect. Are y'all okay? Verse 4. Have you suffered so much for nothing? It really is for nothing. Did you suffer so much for nothing? It's like, man, if we got you through all that stuff, why are you going back to it? Jesus grabbed you and ripped you out of the mud. Why are you trying to clean yourself in that mud pit? That's where the law is. He's like, don't go back in that thing. See, some people would read this and think that it's saying the opposite. That if in fact it was for nothing, it's like, well, maybe it isn't for nothing. That's what some people would read that as. Unfortunately, that's not what it means at all. Have you experienced so much for nothing? Surely it was not in vain. Was it? That's what that means. It's like, did you suffer so much for nothing? Right? That's how they talked back then. That second phrase is like clarification. Don't you agree? Like, if you try to go back to the law, then everything you've been through is for nothing. You're right back to where you began. You're back you're back in the wilderness wandering, trying to figure out where you're supposed to go. trying to obey the law, that's where you're at. By obeying the law, you're back in Haran, trying to get to Moab. For those of you who've been reading Numbers, you know what I'm talking about. You're stuck in the wilderness for 38 years and 10 months trying to figure out where you're at. And that wilderness wandering in circles. Verse 5. Does God give you His Spirit and work miracles among you because you observed the law, or was it because you heard it? Does God supply you with the Holy Spirit? And does He work miracles among you by the works of the law or by hearing? Why does He honor your faith? Is it because of your obedience or is it because of your faith? It's because of your faith. You encounter God not by obedience. You encounter Him by faith, by trusting without any evidence, by holding fast and saying, even though everything else points against you, I will not lose hope. Even though I don't feel good right now, I hold on to the fact that I'm well. I will not bow to this thing. Because His word said I'm whole, and so all I need is more of His presence in my life, and I will be. So then I got to go after the presence, and I don't get the presence by obeying. I go into the presence by going into the temple. Right? How did Moses, seriously, how did Moses encounter the presence of God? Was it because he obeyed the 10 Commandments? Or was it because he knew where the tent was and he went into the tent? I'm asking. The tent, right? So then why do we try to encounter God by obeying the law? See, we've been raised from one law to another, right? So the first law was this law of sin and death. It's the law of Moses. It's Romans 6. Right? Romans 8. Romans 8. Is that where that's at? The law of sin and death? Yeah. Romans 8 and verse 3 and 4. So, I was part of that, but I've been raised to a law of spirit and truth in which there is life. So then that's where I need to get to. I need to operate in spirit and truth, not in law. And so obedience, the real obedience, the one that Jesus said, you've got to obey. Right? Because He said, be holy as I am holy. But remember, we can't get there through the law. We get there through the tent. We get, and again, here's a great question for you to ponder. Why was the tent of tabernacle, the tent of meeting, why was it made the way it was made? 6 layers of stuff. 6 layers of stuff. Bottom layer and top layer, you know what it was made of? Skin. Why? Because it was to show, it was a preamble of what you are. You are the temple. He lives in skin. He resides in skin. So then that's, like, he handpicked from the beginning of time that He was always going to live in you. And so that obedience comes from that place. And that's why I can't teach you the law. Won't do it. Can't do it. Cannot do it. Because then I'm your teacher and He's not. And I'm not about to do that. Y'all understand that? Like, I hope so. I feel like I'm preaching to nothing. Yeah. I ask you again, does God give you the Holy Spirit and work miracles among you because you obey the law? Of course not. It's because you believe the message that you heard about Christ. It's not a complicated thing. What's complicated is absorbing it. What's complicated is applying it. Letting go of, for some of you, 50 years, 60 years, 70 years of drills, of obedience. Not realizing that obedience is love. That's what you obey. Jesus says, they asked Him, right? What's the greatest commandment? Love. That's all He wants us to obey. Obey that command. That everybody you meet, you love them. That's hard to do, isn't it? Yes. There's a lot of people out there that they just don't love you. Yeah. And they don't want you to love them. And And every action they have seems to really fall short of love. And man, does it test your ability to love. But that's the obedience that we're to do. And I can only do that because I spend time in the meeting with him. Inside the tent. In here. Jesus says it's right here in your gut. That's the place of meeting. It's in the gut, in the bowels. So then I better go into that place with my Father and worship him. And I better apply the word and make Jesus the Lord of my life. And not the law the Lord of my life. Jesus, the Lord of my life. I understand the struggle. I understand the hesitation to it. I understand how hard this message is to receive. Maybe for you it's easy, and you're like, Jeff, why do you keep saying that? But some of us have been drilled a different way. And understand that those of you that are right now going, no, I've been where you're sitting right now. I've been there. I've thought that way. And I didn't realize, I said this a couple weeks ago, maybe it was last week, that there's a veil over our eyes. And if we read Galatians together, a lot of veils would be removed. That's what I said. I believe it. That I realized there were layers of veils that were over my eyes. And that I never really read this to apply it to my life. I read it to memorize it and quote it and sound good. And then when I really read it, it was like, oh. And when you try to apply it to your life, you realize that you can't take this any other way than what we're learning right now. It can't be done any other way. So either, for those of you who are still in doubt, either you throw this book out, and Paul was wrong, and you say that this Bible's got errors in it because he didn't mean what he said, or we accept it and realize that we've been believing a lie. That's our choice. Either we have to do this in the fullness of it, or we better take this thing out. And I'm not taking it out. Do you understand what I mean by that? So, we're going to have a different invitation today. I do want you guys to come up and play. If y'all can make your way up here. But what I want today, is I heard this is the only real instructions I got this morning. The guy said, during the altar call, during the invitation is what we call it, during this time, find somebody and pray for them. Everybody here, find somebody to pray for them. Get in there, get intimate while we're singing, this is a time. Talk to God on their behalf. And by the way, whenever their prayer request, even if they don't think, no, I'm good, then you thank Father that they're good. But you pray over them anyway, that way. And you better, this is the part that I really want you to focus on. Pray for them the way that you would want them to pray for you. Keep that in mind. Does that make sense what I'm saying? Like let's get out of our comfort zone, find somebody we don't know really well, and go love on them. Find out, pray for them. If you see somebody that like, hey, I need more than I need help praying for this person. Grab somebody that's walking and say, come over here and we're going to team up with this person. Okay? That's perfectly okay. All right, so we're stand. These guys are going to play, sing. Let's make our way to somebody. Come on, let's get brave. Come on. Let's love, guys. Let's love each other. Real obedience. Let's love. Find somebody. Come on, Rathan. You got hurt? I know.
are my God.
Jesus, I surrender now. I feel as if I surrender
somebody's hand. We won't get in a circle today. Just find somebody's hand, hold their hand, and we'll see if you're going to God from where you're at, because I know there's still people praying. So keep praying, don't stop. But for those of us that can, we'll hold hands, we'll see if you're going to God from where you're at.
I'm so glad